about this journey we've been on called Doing the Work. And basically what we've been doing is we've been asking ourselves in our own individual ways in our lives, what is the work? What is the work that I'm being called to? Because doing the work is going to mean different things for different people. It's going to mean different things for us at different times in our journey. So it's a unique process. But one thing that we've found is whatever it looks like for you, there's probably a degree in which the work is about turning inward. When there's so much going on externally in the world or in our lives, doing the work is looking at ourselves and the things we can take responsibility for. Doing the work is paying attention to our bodies, the feelings and emotions that arise in our bodies, paying attention to the triggers and those things that set off the alarms in our emotions, in our bodies, the reactions that we have to things. And as we notice this, as we're paying more attention, trying to lean into more of a curious mindset rather than being judgmental toward ourselves. And so it's important for us to recognize as we close this series that doing the work is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong endeavor. That in many ways, this series is not a finish line. Oh, look at us. We have arrived. We've figured out all that I need to be this evolved and completely whole person. No. It's not a finish line. It's more of a starting line. That for many of us, we have just named things that we recognize, what a powerful pathway for me to start going down toward healing, toward deeper exploration of who I really am. Because sometimes just coming together and naming the things that we're going through, naming the things that are hard about life, naming the possibilities that come when we open our minds to different ways of approaching life situations, sometimes the simple act of naming can be enough to encourage us on our journey, to make us feel less alone. And so over the past 3 weeks, we've been naming specifics about what it looks like to do the work. You can, of course, listen on podcasts or YouTube if you didn't catch any of those. But today we're going to zoom out. We're going to take a step back and look at really what's happening for us in doing the work. That behind the therapeutic work that we might be doing in our lives, behind the emotional work we might be doing in our lives, behind the somatic work, that's another word for just work of tending to the body, recognizing energy moving in the body. So behind all of those things, that perhaps there is a spiritual reality that we are uncovering. And it's something that I think teachers, texts, traditions have been asking, exploring for thousands of years. It's a real simple question. What or who is the self, the deepest self? What's underneath it all? See, we can kind of get into this headspace, even in this idea of saying something like, I'm working on myself. Because if you think about it, there's two of you in that equation, right? There's the person doing the work and the person being worked on, right? There's the worker and the workee. I don't know if that's a word, but it is for today. It is now, officially. Right? Or maybe you're someone where you have kind of an internal dialogue, or maybe you verbalize it in your day, you talk to yourself a little bit. There's the part of you that's doing the talking and the part of you that's doing the listening. So it raises some interesting questions about what even is a self. It's a bit crowded in here sometimes, right? Henry David Thoreau once wrote about this self-consciousness. He said, I am conscious of a certain doubleness by which I can stand as remote from myself as from another. All right, have we experienced this, being able to witness and observe yourself almost as another? His contemporary, Walt Whitman, immortalized this idea in 3 simple words. He said, I contain multitudes. And I know for so many of us, we have felt this to be true. So today, as we close this series, really what we're going to be exploring is what, or maybe even who is revealed, bless you, what or who is revealed in us as we do the work. Because something that I have found in my own journey is that I really wonder if spirituality is not so much about attaining or achieving or earning, but rather it's this process of revealing the truth of who you are and who you are not. So as we've been doing the work, right, we've been doing it together, and we've also been doing it individually. And as we've been doing it, we've probably been noticing our reactivity. We've been noticing the feelings that arise in our body. We've been noticing our body itself and how it feels to be us. And I think what's probably been happening for you, I know what's been happening for me a bit, is that what's arising is this tender, curious, compassionate awareness of our own experience. That in a way, this tender, this soft, this loving observer is not ruled by the emotions of our lives, nor does it negate them. There's a sense of balance, a sense of groundedness. There's a great word that's often used in Buddhist circles. This word is equanimity, which directly translates to balance, but it's often really used to speak about the balance between these two polarities, that we aren't living our lives unaffected or detached or uninvolved with the happenings of our lives, nor are we all consumed by the feelings and emotions that come and go. Because to be detached, right, to be uninvolved with our own lives, I think is to miss out on really the best part of what it means to be human. But at the same time, to be all consumed by every feeling that comes and arises causes us to lose sight of our values. We get so caught up that we don't even act out of the version of ourselves that we know we want to be. Now, losing ourselves in a moment isn't always a bad thing. It can be a great thing. Sometimes it's the goal, right? Like, think about something like dancing. I think dancing is at its best when you have lost all self-consciousness, right? I've been told that, that's kind of a two-edged sword for me a little bit, but I like losing all self-consciousness. For some people, they do, they play sports in order to lose themselves. Notice I said for some people, right? I was not referring to myself in the first person there. I almost said do sports, which also would have revealed a lot. There are those of you out there who maybe have children or grandchildren, and in your time with them, playing with them, you can lose yourself in the best way. This weekend, I even lost myself in a bowl of ice cream, right? It can show up in all these different ways in our lives. So it can happen in good ways. But there are also times when we lose ourselves to the reactivity, or we lose ourselves to the anger, or we lose ourselves to the fear. And the opportunity, the invitation, is to begin to disentangle ourselves from the feeling, from the emotion, from the reaction. Last week, we talked a bit about the space that we can create between things happening and our reaction to them. And I think that there are some different helpful tools that can create some space between the feelings that arise and our identification with them. Here's something that helps me, may not resonate with you at all, but I find this to be helpful. We say things like, I am angry. And what's interesting is, by saying I am angry, part of what we're saying is all of me is angry. And that might simply not be accurate, right? In any given situation, we think that we're just fully angry, but we might also have some sadness, some fear. Maybe there's a part of us that is okay and at peace. And so it might just not be accurate to our own experience to say, I am angry. I am anger, right? Maybe it would actually be more accurate to say, I am feeling anger, or anger is present right now. Instead of I am anxious, all of me is anxiety, maybe it's, hey, I'm feeling some anxiety right now. Anxiety is showing up for me right now. Fear is showing up for me. I notice fear in my body. There are plenty of great teachers who spoke about really that division between our feelings and thoughts and who we truly are. Kathleen, of course, brought up this wonderful illustration from Pema Chödrön about the sky and the weather. And Pema's not the only one who uses this allegory, right? Of course, you are the sky, everything else is just the weather is a wonderful place to start. And this is echoed by Thích, who said something very similar. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Or Adyashanti, who said, thoughts are like passing clouds, feelings like passing weather. Neither defines the vastness of what you are. It's a beautiful way of thinking about our experience and the work that we're doing and how to notice what's happening for us. But if this is the case, right, if we're willing to just try this on this morning, if it is the case that our emotions and reactions come and go like clouds, like the weather, and you remain as the sky itself, then maybe what we're recognizing, maybe what we're noticing is that the deepest part of you is not swayed by the chaos of the world, by the chaos of your life. See, doing the work is perhaps not about becoming someone, achieving and earning our way to being someone other than what we are. But maybe what it is as we recognize the fleeting nature of our thoughts and as we recognize the temporary nature of our emotions and feelings, maybe what we are revealing underneath is that we already are someone. We've always been someone. It's a different someone than a lot of us imagine, right? Maybe it's a capital S someone. It's something more core and divine than we could even possibly have conceived of. See, we've all been doing this hard work, whether it's the last couple of weeks, but surely throughout our lives, we've all been doing the hard work, whatever that might be for you. But I think regardless, for all of us, piece by piece, it has been revealing that there is actually a deeply peaceful center underneath it all. Of course, we have a myriad and multitude of other parts. And we can have love and gratitude for all of our parts. Friends, your sadness is beautiful and it is valuable. Your anger can have moments and times where it is perfectly justified and can be a catalyst for powerful change. There are all kinds of ways where we can bring love and gratitude for all of our parts, even the parts that we sometimes don't want to identify with at all. But what we're recognizing today is that maybe those parts are not the core of who we are. There is a field of psychology and therapy called IFS. This is short for Internal Family Systems. We have spoken about this from time to time, but it's a modality of therapy that in some form or another is used by 50,000 or more therapists today. And I won't get too into the details of it because I encourage you, if you want to learn more, there are books and many things you can read on it. But the simplest way of explaining it is IFS very much resonates with what Walt Whitman said, that we contain multitudes. And so this internal family are the various parts that show up in your body, in your life, in your experience, right? You could get really specific and granular onto who those parts are and why they're there. But for today, I'll basically just say that what IFS would propose is that those parts are born out of a desire to protect you and keep you safe, particularly early in life, right? Those first 7 to 10 years where we are so incredibly impressionable. And we recognize that if these parts arose out of a desire to care for us, then really we don't want to demonize any part of our experience. We don't want to call any part bad. In fact, this is a motto of IFS, no bad parts, that we have a sense of love and compassion for all parts of ourselves, but we also recognize that there are parts of ourselves that are maybe overactive, or they're not needed in exactly the same way in adulthood. as they arose in childhood. I'll give you an example, right? And this is something I'm sharing from some personal experience, but maybe you have your own version of this. Perhaps you grew up and in your childhood there was some chaos, unpredictability, right? Maybe that was just your environment. Maybe that was the emotions and nature of your parents. And so there was a part of you that in a desire to protect yourself, to feel safe, to feel grounded, to find that predictability, that this part kind of showed up and said, well, I guess I need to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant so that we can feel safe. It's a part of you that is always looking around to see if there's anything you need to be protecting yourself from, waiting for the other shoe to drop, or maybe a part of you that learns how to manage the emotions of other people so you can feel safe. Has anyone ever felt any version of this in your own life? Okay, what tends to happen is that this part doesn't go anywhere, particularly if we're not addressing it, we're not curious about it, we're not learning about it, and ultimately not seeing and holding it in love. This part will stay with us in that same way throughout our lives. And regardless of how your situation might change, you could leave the house, you could never speak to your parents again, you could make millions of dollars, you could be the most successful person on the planet. But the hypervigilance will not go anywhere. The anxiety, the waiting for the other shoe to drop will not go anywhere because it is a core part of you. It has become overactive. It might not be necessary anymore. You've made it out of that time in your life where it came to protect you. And so maybe that's the journey. And that's really the journey that IFS takes you on with all the parts of yourselves. But what it's really doing is it's revealing to you that that aspect of you, no matter how dominant it may feel at times, it is not the core of who you are. IFS calls this the true core of who you are, core self-energy. And it basically visualizes it like a solar system, right? And imagine that you have in this solar system planets that are orbiting, that are like these various parts and aspects of yourself. But at that center is the sun, and that sun is true or core self. That sun is self-energy. Now, you can use any word you'd like for this. You can use the word like spirit or higher self or whatever, fits your own vision of it. But IFS would basically say that, and the way they label it is that you have these different parts that orbit this core self, and that core self is always there. It is always with you. You might not notice it. You might not feel it. It might not feel nearly as accessible to you in some times as opposed to others, but yet it's always there. You might be wondering, well, what does that mean? How can I find it? How do I even know if I'm living from that? Well, IFS gives us the 8 C's of core self to help us recognize when we are living from that place. And so I encourage you, as I read them off, that you would just maybe be curious within yourself, where are moments in my life that I have embodied these characteristics? Core self is deeply calm. Core self has curiosity. Core self possesses great clarity. Core self is compassionate. Core self is confident. Core self is courageous. That deeply within you, you are wonderfully creative. And then all of us have the capacity for incredible connectedness, not just with ourselves and our parts, but with others, with the divine. Whether or not you feel like you can access these all that much, what IFS would say is that we all have all of these attributes in us. Now, I recognize that in life, there comes many a time where there are disruptions and challenges and frustrations and obstacles, and it feels like this is so far away, right? It feels like the parts take over. I know for me, when I feel moments of anxiety, there are not 8 C's, there are no C's, okay? Anxiety looks at me and is like, I'm the captain now, okay? Anxiety can just take over in your body, right? This is what we say when people, they have anger and we say like someone is seeing red. What we're saying is that anger has completely taken over. Sometimes fear takes over, fight or flight, right? And we're fully invested and involved in that part. And it's in these moments that unfortunately we lose connection, we lose touch to that self. But when we are paying attention to our bodies, when we're noticing in a gentle, loving way, we're noticing the triggers, the reactions, that we are increasing the space between what happens and how we react to it, so that we are becoming more aware of our parts. And by being aware of our parts, by virtue of the fact that we are noticing a part, it is placing us more into self. It is relaxing us into self. Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, has some pretty powerful things to say about core self. The beauty of the self is that it is already there. It just gets eclipsed. The self is in everybody. It can't be damaged, and it knows how to heal. Self is not a part. Self is the essence of who you are. The idea here is that underneath it all, you are peace. Underneath it all, you are the sky. Underneath it all, you actually have all of the greatest qualities that you are striving for in your waking life. And that part, or that truth, not a part, but that true essence and core of what you are, it can't be damaged. It can't be destroyed. If you're willing to just try this frame and this way of looking at it, if you just are willing to try this perspective on this morning, then maybe we can take a second and even look at our own lives. And look at the hardest moments of our lives, the moments that felt as though they threatened to destroy who we were. They threatened to take everything away, our identity. Everything felt called into question, right? We've all faced versions of pain and trauma and uncertainty that can seem to do that to us. But if we just, even for this morning, try this on, then what's being said is that even in those worst of moments that you faced, that who you truly were was not in danger of being even tarnished. Yes, things happen that obscure who we truly are, that cover over, that eclipse, that bury it, but it itself is not in danger. Now, if we're going to try this on, right, if we're going to explore this idea, even just this morning, then it actually even begs another question. That if who you are deep down, the truth and essence of who you are is love, is peace, is compassion, right? That is that infinite, beautiful light of the divine. And if that's truly who you are underneath, then it also means that it's true of the person that you detest most in this world. It's true of maybe the person in your life that you have the most trouble with. It's true of the person in the world, whether you know them or not, that triggers you the most. This is where it gets a little hard. Some of you are like, okay, I'm done now. The first part was good. That was enough for me. Right? But can we apply it universally? Can we not just find that spark of the divine within ourselves, but can we find it in all beings? Right? This is why it's a great perspective to increase compassion, that recognition of core self in all things, in all people. Now, we're talking about this, and we're specifically talking about, of course, a more recent, modern modality of therapy that is practiced pretty widely throughout the world at this point. And yet, does anyone out there hear some of this stuff and is thinking, this sounds a lot like ancient spirituality? That you could just trade out some words, right? You could trade out core self for the soul, or Christ consciousness, or Buddha nature. Because this is why the work can be so powerful. The work doesn't ask us to divide between mind and body and spirit. Right? The work is not simply intellectual or emotional or physical or spiritual, but it's holistic. It includes all. It is integrated. So really this journey of coming back to our true self is about finding more peace, because peace is our true nature. Now, it doesn't mean that life is going to have no pain, that we're going to be able to avoid all suffering. Because if we're living this human life, if we're fully embodying our humanity, humans are vulnerable, we are fragile. And if we're going to love anyone or anything at all, then we're probably going to have our heart broken. Right? And so maybe avoiding pain is not what this work is about. There are some things you can do to avoid pain on the side, right? Like those of you who come from the Midwest, you said, I'm never going to have another Midwest winter, and you moved here. You're avoiding some pain. Some of you, there's some of you watching online who have already left Tucson for the summer, or some of you who are about to. You're avoiding some pain, right? We understand that. But there is also a degree of pain and grief and sadness that is simply part of the experience. It is a guarantee. And the work of coming back to our true self is not the work of eliminating pain, but of holding it, of creating space for it. Right? If all of our different emotions, even the emotions that are painful, are in our orbit, but we can find ourselves there at the center in the sun at core self, then we can hold and be present with the entire solar system of how we show up in this world, not needing to control or explain or fix, but simply that compassionate, loving awareness of it all. Now, sometimes that clarity, that ability to just see ourselves and our whole experience in that way, quite often it gets covered up, doesn't it? Like if you imagine seeing through a windshield, right, as being able to see the world around us as it is. Naturally, rain and dust covers up our windshield. And the work, whatever that work means for you, right, whether it's the work you're doing on yourself, the work that shows up in relationships or community, or even the work of your connection to the divine, that work is almost, to me, it's like a windshield wiper, or it's like, better yet, a car wash that cleans the windshield, that cleans the lens, and allows us to see clearly that the work is about remembering what is already there. Perhaps the work is not about making ourselves and our bodies invincible, but it's about recognizing something that is invincible within us, like an invincible soul. Perhaps the work is not protecting ourselves from any possible hurt, but recognizing that we have a deep part of ourselves, a soul that knows how to heal. Perhaps the work is not about being perfect, but reconnecting and remembering a soul that is really after something far better than perfection. Love. A love that can embrace all, including the imperfections. Friends, I think that the invitation of this series really has been to recognize that you are not defined by your reactions. You are not defined by your pain, your wounds, your thorns, the feelings and emotions that come and go. Because beneath it, you have always been loving. You have always been connected. You have always been a peaceful soul. And yes, we all from time to time lose touch with that part of ourselves. But friends, it is never too far away. Never too far away for us to reconnect with it, to remember it as we truly are. And so this morning, I just want to create a few minutes for us to reconnect with it. If you are comfortable, you can close your eyes or just take a soft gaze. Find yourself in a comfortable position in your chair. And we just take a couple of deep breaths together. And in order to connect with our core self, sometimes it's helpful to recognize what isn't core self. Let's take a moment and just gently become aware of all of the parts of you that might be present this morning. Feelings, emotions. Just notice gently what is showing up right now. What is here in the body, in my awareness? Maybe there is some sadness and grief or anxiety and fear. Maybe there's anger, frustration. Maybe there's joy and excitement. Whatever it may be, we take a moment to notice all that is present. And without trying to fix or change anything, we simply extend a tender and loving and compassionate awareness to that part of ourselves, holding it in love. And as we give those parts of ourselves love, as we give those parts of ourselves acceptance and compassion, we may even ask, who is it that is doing the loving? Who is it that is extending that compassion? Who is being tender? This reconnects us with that deeper part of ourself, that core, that is an infinite source of love, a boundless source of compassion. And as you connect to that essence of who you are, I want to invite you to take a moment and remember times in your life, whether recent or throughout your whole journey, remembering moments where you could feel yourself embodying and operating from this aspect. Remembering the moments in your life where you were calm, deeply calm, even amidst the storms. Remembering the moments of life where you led with curiosity rather than judgment. Recalling moments in your life where no matter the chaos or confusion, you could see things clearly. Recalling times where you were able to extend compassion even when it was incredibly difficult. Remembering when you've led with confidence, accepting and embracing yourself for who you are. Remembering moments of courage where you stood up and stood for what mattered most. Remembering times of deep creativity where you were able to see things that no one could in a moment, where you were bringing things forth that almost felt like it came from somewhere else. And moments where you felt deeply connected to yourself, to others, and to all that is, to the divine source. And we recognize that this core self, it's always here. Yes, sometimes it feels further away, but it's always here. And perhaps it is only a few breaths away. Perhaps it is only waiting for us to take that moment between something happening and our reaction to it to create some space and let it show right back up. So we acknowledge this part of ourselves with deep love and gratitude. With a few more deep breaths, when you feel comfortable, when you feel ready, and take your time, you can slowly open your eyes. I'm deeply grateful for all of you, whether you joined us today or you've been with us throughout this series. It has been work, a deeply courageous work. And it's a work that we continue. It's part of what being in community is, because it's a collective work. Right? As we show up for ourselves, we are naturally showing up for each other. And so I just have deep appreciation for all of you and what we are building together. And I just want to thank you for showing up open-hearted today to see what might arise for you in this conversation.